Now more than any other league in recent history, I don't think I can pick top league starters. In fact, I don't think anyone can. Because we've got over 100 reasons to speculate on what the best build might be, and very few answers. However, I can pick some very solid and reliable league starters, then talk about a few more experimental things which I think are interesting and have a lot of potential. So before I get into that, I just want to start with a little disclaimer. All the footage in this video is just so you get a rough idea of how the skill looks visually. Think of it similar to GGG's showcases. It's not supposed to be representative of a full endgame build or even your character on league start. And also, I'll try to link relevant guides or videos where applicable. But again, this league more than any, there's so many other possibilities that not only is this far from an exhaustive list, but we don't know what day 1 or week 1 bugs are going to crop up because of a changeover to transfigured gems. So I suggest looking at multiple sources, multiple guides, multiple recommendations, and have a backup plan. That way, even if a skill you're planning to start does get bricked, you'll have something that you can use instead. And if you want to know what I'm starting, well, do be sure to get subscribed, leave a like while you're down there, and for now, let's jump into things with my first recommendation. Toxic Rain Pathfinder. The reason I'm recommending this is with Warden of the Magi and Tinctures, Pathfinder is more tempting than ever. You get free flask effect and easy flask sustain. In theory, part of this could be used to just be a quote-unquote Pathfinder on any ascendancy. Or you can use it to make your Pathfinder even better, sustaining flasks that you never would have been able to in your wildest dreams. For example, depending on how exactly the tincture interacts with totems, if the charges from your totems hits go to you, something which, to be clear, I don't think is going to happen, you could sustain absurd flasks like Dying Sun. And should this be affecting Toxic Rain if your totems are dealing damage? Yes, according to the recently answered questions, the on-hit effects are applied. It's just a matter of if they'll be applied to the totems or you, which will need to be tested after league start. However, if we put Warden of the Magi completely aside, you don't use the Wildwood Ascendancy at all, and instead go with a Primalist with a bunch of charms that make everything even better, yeah, this is still going to be super, super awesome. Because you could also be a Pathfinder with the best damage over time nodes from everybody else. Also, Toxic Rain's new quality is 20% base duration, which does add a slight ramp-up time, but results in a good portion of extra damage, makes it easier to pre-stack your damage on a boss, and more or less negates the previous nerfs to the Toxic Rain skill. Remember though, you'll need to grab a little bit of AoE from gear or a bow mastery just to make the skill feel good and play well. You could even use something early like a Carcass Jack. That's a perfectly viable option and it'll solve your AoE almost single-handedly. Now I love playing Pathfinder at league start because it feels like I put on a Mage Blood from, well, about Cruel Lab. And Toxic Rain's been a skill that I've played a lot. I played it in Delve League as a poison build, and it sucked. And then I played it as an occultist that was CI with Soul Strike. Weird build, but pretty okay. And I played a lot of Toxic Rain Raider. That was really fun. In fact, you can probably find some of my guides from Expedition on Toxic Rain Raider giving my thoughts. And now I think Toxic Rain is in a really good spot, so it's absolutely something that I feel comfortable recommending. And if you don't want to play Toxic Rain, don't worry, Explosive Arrow Ignite got buffed and is better than ever. Hit-based Explosive Arrow is also really, really good. Lightning Arrow and Tornado Shot are good, but I think everyone might be sick of these builds already. I don't know. They're not really my style. If they're your style, you can absolutely play it. But now let's take a look at a PoE Ninja profile from early in Trial of the Ancestors to get an idea of what some of your early gearing might look like. Now first up we have a Pathfinder Ascendancy with what I would call a pretty standard setup here. Starting off, Nature's Adrenaline, 3 flask charges, this is really good. Nature's Reprisal, of course you want that withered. Toxic Rain doesn't hit a ton, however with multiple Ballista Totems constantly attacking it should hit enough for Nature's Reprisal to be up fully. Master Surgeon makes your life flasks keep ticking. And Flask Effect and Flask Charges Gained is always good. You get a lot of those from the small nodes, plus Nature's Boon for 30% Magic Flask Effect, which is important because these are going to be up the entire time. Now as you'll notice, the gear's a little scuffed, but you know what? That's fine. It's totally fine to have scuffed gear on day 3. Mortifying Aspect is a good way to fit in another aura. Luma's Requital is, well, not actually required, but it's certainly very good for the build. It gives you Ancestral Bond for +1 Ballista, increases and reductions to cast speed apply to attack speed, so you can kind of double dip on things that say cast and attack speed. That feels really, really good, and there's several nodes that do that. And of course, we've got a Lightning Coil. It's a common, unique, really nicely defensive. Remember, Toxic Rain is a chaos damage over time skill, but it is not poison. All poison is chaos damage over time, not all chaos damage over time is poison. Pretty standard stuff for Toxic Rain. You want to cap out your suppress so it makes sense to wear evasion gear. Or, of course, you can just grab it all from the tree. Now, personally, I would want to have suppress on as much gear as possible. That way I'm able to cap it out. But if you have enough dexterity with Magebane, then Magebane's going to entirely cap your suppress, maybe with a little help from reflexes. Life-wise, this isn't the super tankiest build, but it's not going to be exactly squishy either, since you're constantly slowing enemies, and just not needing to get hit does add a lot of safety, since you can drop Ballista and then run around. Just watch out for your Ballista totems dying. If they die, that feels really, really bad. But personally, I would say this is a fairly average example, and if you want to know more, then I've got something even better for you. We have a full build guide over at Maxwell GG. So if you need a little more help, or want to go through all the way from level 1 to the end game, then you can follow our gear progression, early game, mid game, end game. It'll take you all the way. And I'll try my best to remember to link it down below. Admittedly, I sometimes do forget links. So there's two things that I really like about this recommendation. First, if you need a full guide, we've got that. Second of all, it's a really good beginner-friendly build. You could make a lot of mistakes, and it tends to go generally okay for you, especially in the early acts. Now, of course, if you have negative 60% res and you go fight an uber boss, you're going to get absolutely smashed. But if you happen to have a few undercapped resistances going into Kitava, you might die once or twice. I wouldn't do it on hardcore, but he's also probably going to die fairly quickly. The only mistake that I've seen get people into a lot of trouble is flipping gems. Now, you don't have to worry about flipping your Toxic Rain anymore, but you do have to worry about flipping your Ballista support. So, if you flip it, your totem life is going to go down significantly, which makes them very squishy and they'll be killed easily. Either level up a second Ballista totem gem, or only do this when you know you're going to be taking on some easy content. But aside of that, you should be able to breeze through, and there's some interesting potential with tinctures to make this even better. Remember though, even if tinctures don't work out at all, then you've always got the build your own ascendancy in the Wildwood Primalist that should offer a lot of powerful choices. I mean, after all, there's plenty of really good things from Deadeye, like extra projectiles, or I guess if you wanted to do some weird Mirage Archer stuff, that might be stealable now, that you can always grab for your Pathfinder. And it's not every league start that you get to feel like you put on a Mageblood around Cruel Lab. Next up we have Summon Raging Spirit or SRS Guardian. Now if I had to name a build that's going to be the strongest known quantity, it's SRS Guardian. When I leveled my Cast on Crit Energy Blade character, the Righteous Fire minion from my Ascendancy, not even my Ascendancy, not even anything else, just the summoned Sentinel of Radiance from Radiant Crusade, hard carried me all the way to maps. All I had to do was walk and convocate occasionally. Sure, you do lose a little bit of movement speed on your SRS from the change. Don't worry, you're not losing damage. All that does is that 38% more multi is just built into their damage scaling, which, to be fair, probably should have been a long time ago, but hey, these systems get old, stuff piles up, and now I'm glad to see it being addressed. And you also gain, potentially, the very powerful Replica Covenant, providing a level 29 added cold support. Is this going to be good? I don't know. Is this going to be super rare and expensive? Probably. But it seems to work for Poison SRS, and hey, even without Replica Covenant, the build's really, really awesome. It absolutely blasts through and crushes pinnacle bosses. So best case, the build is truly insane. Worst case, it's still really good. And so now, let's take a quick look at someone who played it in 3.22. Right, SRS Guardian. The goal of the SRS Guardian is to be unkillable yourself, while your skulls kill everything for you. So we've got Radiant Crusade. It does fall off later, but don't worry, Unwavering Crusade is absolutely worth it. You're effectively getting free, or I should say 3 free auras for your SRS. Then Time of Need. The last nodes are, in some aspects, personal choice, though I do think Time of Need is a very strong one. Every 4 seconds, removes curses and elemental ailments, and you regenerate 100% life. So if something doesn't kill you, this is going to heal you through it. Then Radiant Faith. grants armor based on your reserved mana, and ES based on your reserved mana. You probably won't be able to min-max this at low levels, however, even without min-maxing it, it's still super valuable. The other choice would be to go into something like Unwavering Faith, which personally I wouldn't recommend. I don't think you really need the life recovery rate. Or Bastion of Hope for extra block, which honestly is a really, really strong choice, and I can absolutely see taking this over one of the other two nodes. Probably Radiant Faith, since I think you can get enough armor and you're not really going to scale that much ES on basic gear. Though obviously it depends on what gear you have. Kind of a personal choice, and you are using it for EV, so it's not like it's contributing to your defenses, it is contributing to your mana. You need to balance that out as well. There's a pretty decent amount of room to invest into block on your tree. You're fairly near the block wheel with glancing blows. You can come up here, you can come over here. You're also near minion stuff. And this makes for a very, very comfy build. It's kind of just a walking simulator, which you might have seen from the footage before. And there's no required items. This is the helmet with just +2 to level of all minion skill gems. Yeah, that's really all you need. Minion wand, fire skill gems works, minion skill gems works, and not as many people are using the fire skill gem as all minions, so it can be a little bit cheaper. Morph Mischief gets a similar discount when going for their skill gems on minion wands. For a chest piece, it's actually a really bad rare chest piece, kind of what I'd expect from day 3. You can find these corrupted chests for relatively cheap. Some gloves that were probably made by Roger picked up off the floor. Shield with fire spell skill gems. I'm sure there's some RF Jug out there crying because they didn't get this item, but that's okay. You needed it more than they did, and they're going to life stack now anyway, so even less competition. And +1 to level of all skill gems. I really like +1 to level of all as opposed to +1 to level of fire, just because it scales things like your auras, which adds a good bit of defense, because I'm pretty sure you just run, haste, which is movement speed, and also therefore clear speed, a little bit of precision so they can hit stuff, and then some nice defensive auras like vitality, skitterbots for damage. You can even run determination if you want, or you might say, hey, I'm tanky enough as is, I'm just going to go all in on that damage. In this case, looks like we've got some determination here. I approve, I'd definitely do it myself. And last up, because SRS scales really well off of damage, get damage, as much as possible in all the abyssal sockets. In fact, get even more abyssal gear. Maybe if you get a hollow fossil cheap early on, roll some boots, roll some gloves. Most of these items don't have too many specific stats, it's really just the helmet, so picking up an abyssal socket on gear could be a good way to get extra damage. Now, if you want to play SOS Guardian, but you're not sure, is Poison better? I can't really answer that because I don't know quite how good or rare Replica Covenant's going to be. But there's a few things to keep in mind. Both builds are good enough to clear out all the content. Poison SRS requires more gear to get going, and it does overtake SRS Guardian at some points. You can kind of think of this as early game. SRS Guardian's way ahead. Then you start pulling into the mid-game, and Poison SRS shoots past SRS Guardian. Then you get into the endgame, and Poison SRS starts to approach the dot cap, because their damage can only get so good. And SRS Guardian starts to creep up and overtake it. And in the super late game, like, SRS Guardian absolutely destroys Poison SRS, because you were capped long ago and you couldn't keep improving your defenses in any meaningful way. There's definitely a point where both builds get there, and they say, hey, I do all the damage and don't die. So if you care about a dick measuring contest, I guess this is the way to win. But realistically, if you're asking which of these is better, go with whatever you feel like. Hell, go with whatever ascendancy you want to play your second build on, because they're both really good. But if I had to pick one, personally, this is what I'd pick because the early game is just that much of a breeze. And last up, a build that I played the last time Ultimatum was in the game. Kinda sorta. Corrupting Fever. See, there wasn't so much a Corrupting Fever champion back in Ultimatum League, but there was a Corrupting Fever Ascendant, and that worked really, really well in Ultimatums. So I suspect, because Corrupting Fever Gladiator has very, very good coverage, Corrupting Fever Champion has very good coverage and even more defenses, and Ultimatum's going to be super popular, if you want a zoomy, blasty mapper and don't want to play bow build because you don't actually like dying, you also don't mind being on a bit of a timer, then yeah, go Corrupting Fever. because Corrupting Fever Champion's looking like it's in a really good spot, especially with the buff to Reap. Now I do think it's a little bit of an acquired taste. You have to knock yourself to low life to proc adrenaline every 20 seconds. If the idea of maintaining a buff every 20 seconds sounds fun, it's extra things to do, awesome. If it sounds terrible, then don't do it. And if the idea of killing bosses appeals to you, go play the SRS Guardian, because that's much better at single target. Single target is very much the weakness of Corrupting Fever even with the buffs, though it shouldn't be as bad as it was before, and Poet's Pen provides a lot of quality of life, which leads to a build feeling very good, especially when mapping. Oh yeah, and if there's a bunch of rare monsters you're concerned about, just pick up Inspired Learning or Headhunter and they will literally feed you power, mostly in the form of defenses. If you want to go Magic Find, yep, that also works. Now, how hard will it be to take on Trial Master? I would say a little more difficult than some of the other builds I've recommended, but it should still be doable because it was back then, and I don't think they've done any major buffs to Trial Master. The hardest version is actually the one where you give up Trial Master and go for 3 extra rounds, and that's where Corrupting Fever Champion is going to shine. Also, I apologize a little bit about the gameplay footage here. My gear was especially scuffed. You're looking at a half-respect Shield Crush Slayer. So, don't take this as the actual performance of a build. Go look up what Tripolar Bear's done. With that said, let's look at what someone else has done on PoE Ninja. So here we have a Corrupting Fever Gladiator. Poet's Pen, because you want to use Kinetic Blast. Kinetic Blast has really good screen coverage. Those were the explosions everywhere. Well, half of them. The other half were from Hemophilia. So if you like explosions, then this is a great build to play. Defensively, it's no slouch either. You get Divine Flesh with the 4th Vow, so you can very effectively mitigate physical, elemental, and chaos by stacking armor. You also get Saffel's Frame. It's a relatively inexpensive unique item that's fairly available at League Start and gives 4% to all max res, including Chaos, which is really good if you have Divine Flesh. As you can see, that is from Glorious Vanity Zabaqua. If you don't think you can get Glorious Vanity Zabaqua, 4th Vow, Hemophilia, Poet's Pen, and Saffel's, the build's going to feel a lot worse. It's also going to feel worse without Doriani's Invitation, because you want to be able to leech from the damage done by your Reap and your Exsanguinate. You can't really leech from Corrupting Fever, that's a dot, and you can't really leech from Kinetic Blast, because you are doing absolutely nothing to scale Kinetic Blast. It's really just there to pierce through targets and explode as many times as possible. So here's just a quick example. Of course, you don't need to crit, so this way you don't need accuracy. This is why you want to proc the Adrenaline every 20 seconds. And hey, you recover 25% of your life, which makes it a little less painful. This helps you fit in an aura, makes your auras better on enemies. And you get free Fortify. Everyone loves a free Fortify. If you're playing a Gladiator version of this, absolutely steal that, ASAP. And so this is pretty much what you get if you want a tanky, zoomy mapper. But Corrupting Fever is a duration skill with a base duration of 6 seconds. It's increased a little bit by efficacy, it's reduced by Swift Affliction, and you're always going to be playing on 2 timers. So if you enjoy that, cool. If you don't, do not play this build. Though luckily, every time you're life tapping and spending life, you are refreshing your Corrupting Fever, it's just out of combat where it falls off, not in combat when you're killing enemies. Though in combat you will want to use it just to get the Adrenaline bonus from First to Strike, Last to Fall Up. It's kind of like having a Death Rush, except you can actually do it on single target rather than requiring to kill enemies. And yes, if you want to play Corrupting Fever, there is a League Start guide available over on Maxroll. It's currently in the process of being updated and will be fully ready for release at League Start, or ideally a little bit before. So if you're the sort of person that needs a guide or just doesn't want to have to worry too much about what's going on, then head over to Maxroll GG and take a look at Corrupting Fever Champion. Alright, so those are my pretty safe, gonna work, they've worked before, they didn't get too many major changes, kind of League Starter suggestions. But what about new stuff, or old stuff that's actually new, or things that might be way better now? Well, a lot's changing in that regard. And so things that were an ideal starter in the past, like Righteous Fire, are no longer. I think an endgame low-life Righteous Fire, probably Guardian, super powerful now. But I wouldn't be League starting it personally. And if I did, I'd probably be role-playing as a Fire Trap build, since you can scale Fire Trap really well on either Chieftain or even Jug, and use RF to clear after you get a bit of gear. Which, by the way, RF Jug, totally fine in the endgame. So now, I wanted to talk about 2 builds that are new. And by new, I mean they're actually old builds that got revived by the current league. So let's take a look at some examples over on PoE Ninja. First up, Divine Ire Totems. I first heard about Divine Ire Totems when I saw Tatyantel playing Totems in the Gauntlet. He's played a lot of Divine Ire and he's played a lot of Stormburst, both skills that seem to have gotten nothing but buffs out of the changes. I think anyway. I'm not 100% sure how Stormburst with the Stormburst enchant worked out. Divine Ire, though, definitely way ahead. Even just going from 20 stages to 10 makes it way more playable. And hey, if your totems are channeling for you, you don't have to stand in place channeling. There's even some really cool trance qualities that may in fact be even better. Though I have no idea if they're good or not because I haven't looked into that for Divine Ire specifically. I've been too busy distracted by Ray's Zombie of Falling like everyone else. No, I don't have a problem. You have a problem, okay? You should be looking at Ray's Zombie of Falling too. Now, Divine Ire is another build that works really well on basic gear and has super easy scaling because it's Fizz converted over. So, Watcher's Eye mod, you've got Zealotry and Wrath. Cast speed's generally very undervalued. This is probably not a super expensive eye, although now that I've shown it in a video, who knows? Maybe it's going to be 50 divines on League Start. If it is, don't buy it for that. It's not worth that at all. Basic weapon, you can get, lightning, fizz spells. Again, fizz spells often goes under the radar. Lightning damage to spells, crit to spells, plenty of options. Very basic gear, just capping out suppress, getting a little bit of armor. All the stuff that feels good. And playing a Hierophant, the Totem Ascendancy, because why not? If you wanted to be really greedy, you could probably do something else, but just go Hierophant on League Start. It's easier. You get Ritual of Awakening. That feels really, really, really good, because you get the mana regen, and you get the Life Leech. Trust me, that Life Leech makes a world of difference, and absolutely makes it worth starting this Ascendancy. Which, by the way, if you can steal that on, say, a Pathfinder using Ballista Totems, oh my god, that's going to feel incredible, especially for the next build that I'm going to talk about. Then we've got, Arcane Blessing, Conviction of Power, free defenses, helps fix fizz damage. The gear is very basic, exactly what I expect for day 3, pretty easy to get. The only thing that I would note is this is really cool. Socketed gems have 30% increased reservation efficiency. The rest of the shield is not too fancy. If you can pick one of these up, it's a really easy way to fit an extra aura into your build for damage or defenses. And do try to get cast speed. You don't have to go to 20 stages anymore, but cast speed is still going to feel really good. That said, there's going to be a lot of experimentation here. It's an old build, but it's a new build, but it's also a completely different build. So stay tuned, shop around, maybe even do a practice run. It won't feel the same at all, but you'll at least get somewhat of an idea of how the skill plays. Other thing that I wanted to quickly highlight is here, with a Dark Scorn, it's a poison build. Caustic Arrow Poison to be exact, because there's a new Caustic Arrow of Poison. Now, disclaimer, I have no idea how rare Transfigured Gems are. It could be a terrible idea to try to League Start it. But the good news is, this overlaps with Poison Blade Vortex. This overlaps with, Poison Pathfinder if you play it on a Pathfinder. You can use pretty much any skill you want. It overlaps with Toxic Rain. There's a lot of things that you can do and play until you get the gem, and then swap over with very few respecs. Or you can just play Poison Caustic Arrow. I mean, they certainly did, and it worked out pretty much fine for them. As you can see, they kept going, scaling the gear, and got enough money to reroll after buying a Mage Blood into a completely different build. Which is a perfect example of how you can use one build to get your start, take it pretty far. I mean, it's not super cheap to have a Noxious Strike Flesh and Flame on week 1, but then play something completely different later. This build does rely on the Covenant. If you don't think you can get a Covenant, personally, I would not recommend starting this. In fact, I'm not really sure I'd recommend starting this anyway, but Caustic Arrow of Poison has gotten so many insane buffs that I think it's worth considering. Mark of Submission, easy to get. Snakebite, easy to get. Dark Scorn, depends. If no one wants it, easy to get. If everyone wants it, hard to get. And the rest is your basic poison/suppress gear. You've even got a nice cheeky little blood notch here and a rain of splinters for the extra projectiles. The way this works is shotgunning overlaps. Your totems shoot off the ground, your caustic arrows explode. Normally they would leave behind a poison cloud. But with caustic arrow of poison, the cloud component and the chaos dot there is gone. It's all about your attacks. You get some flat damage and some better scaling. Now, I haven't done the math. I haven't really gone into PoE. So let's do that and let's see how much that cloud you're losing is. All right, so here we have the build. Now, something to note, caustic arrow shotguns. So, depending on how many projectiles you get, the poison DPS is going to increase. Right now it's this. Well, we know it's at least 3 because there's 3 ballista totems. And we know they're firing multiple projectiles. So let's say 9. This is before scaling additional ballista totems. This is also probably way lower than the actual overlaps. Probably more like 15 total. There we go. Either way, respectful number, I'm just going to pick something random and leave it at 15, because that doesn't really matter. What matters is you're losing about 68,000 DPS, which is almost irrelevant in comparison to this. And we go to, let's see, default quality, because quality doesn't matter. You'll have to make up for the wither. That's okay. We want to go up to 70%, because that's the scaling. All right. Nope. Stuck at 69. There we go. Damage is going up. The dot DPS is problematic now, but we can just pretend that's not there and not really look at the total. This is also why I don't necessarily like kind of shoving things into PoE. It doesn't give the best calculations. As you can see, the number jumped by a lot here. That is the extra damage added to attacks from caustic arrow of poison. So it looks like it's a significant improvement, assuming the shotgunning behavior is unchanged, which we will just have to test when the gem comes out. It may be unchanged, it may be changed. This could be a terrible idea, but I wanted to talk about it because I find it interesting, and this section really just should be treated as a bonus. My recommendations were the 3 builds at the start of a video. Okay, maybe that still isn't enough for you though, and you want some just weird stuff that could be ideas. I haven't looked into any of the following things. They're just other ideas that I've heard people talking about. So if you want to look into it, 1. Perforate. My experience with the skill is it's pretty darn janky, but the damage buff is quite massive, especially with a +2 baseline spikes. And with a solid damage buff, maybe that's enough to make up for the jank. Number 2. Snipe into mana forged arrows. This was already strong, and in fact, Arrow said really good things about his experiences playing it in the past. I don't know if the removal of alt quality gems, swapping over to trans quality gems, has changed anything there. It did give Snipe another stage without an enchantment. It might have improved stuff, it might not have. Maybe he'll have a video on it, you can go check out his channel. I'll try to remember to link it down below. But like I said, I'm thinking about Raise Zombie Falling. Is it a good idea to league start this? No, it's a terrible idea to league start this. Is there a chance that I try anyway? Yes, and then I'll just cry, fail at it miserably, and play Detonate Dead, because you can probably pivot from Raise Zombie Falling into Detonate Dead, and we all know DD still works. So those are 3 recommendations of league starters, 2 ideas of things to look into more, and then 3 very bad ideas that I wanted to talk about anyway. Links to as many things as I can find will be down in the description below, but I strongly encourage you to look at PoE Ninja, check out what other people were doing. I like to look at day 3 and also week 1 to try to get an idea, or look around on YouTube, maybe Google some stuff, find some other guides, see what people are playing and how they're playing it. Personally, I've always had the best experiences with a build, be it a league starter or something else, when I take a little bit of something from here or a little bit of something from there, and combine it all in a way that matches my style. Now, sometimes builds are very cookie cutter, and you just gotta have to copy, because as one thing leads to another, it's all or nothing. But in more cases than not, I find it's better to take a little bit from a lot of places than just copy one. But hey, let me know down below. Do you tend to follow a guide, copy from one simple source, or take a little bit from everywhere and adapt it yourself? And also let me know if you think there's other really strong league starters that I missed, because I'm 100% sure I did. I could probably make the top 30 builds that look cool this league, and I'd still miss a ton of stuff. So instead, I wanted to talk about these, and next I'm going to try to talk about some of the transfigured gems that we've seen so far. So do be sure to get subscribed if that interests you at all. With that said, thanks for watching. A special thanks to my patrons and channel members for the continued support. For as low as $1 a month, you can help make more videos like this possible, and a link to support is down below. With that, I hope you learned something. Maybe this helped you decide on your league starter, maybe it just made it worse by adding more options. Either way, good luck, and I'll see you again sometime soon.